The last 24 hours of Luke Perry's life. Luke Perry's appearance as Fred Andrews in the CW series Riverdale introduced him to a whole new generation of fans. But before that, Luke had a decades-long career beginning in the 1980s, and it showed no signs of stopping. Even before his death, he was filming for Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But then, in 2019, the year the movie launched, a cruel twist of fate saw Luke rush to hospital after suffering a stroke. He died just days later. Coy Luther Perry III was born on October 11, 1966, in Mansfield, Ohio. He was the middle of 3 children born to Ann Perry, a homemaker, and Coy Luther Perry Jr., a steel worker. He grew up in Fredericktown, about an hour outside of the city of Columbus and with a population of 2,300. He later poked fun at his more rural roots, claiming that at Fredericktown High School, he and his classmates took classes on giving birth to cows and driving tractors. His father died when he was just 14 years old, but in 1992, Luke told Vanity Fair that their relationship had been a strained one and his parents had divorced when he was 6. He explained, "He was violent. He was drunk. He treated my mother very poorly. Had I been big enough at the time, I would have beat his ass. But I wasn't. So I always felt that I should have been able to protect her better. But I was a 6-year-old kid. That's where my frustration stems from. I tried to reiterate to these people writing, Beverly Hills 90210, that these kids ain't stupid. They see. They know." From a young age, Luke knew that he wanted to pursue an acting career, noting that he often felt like a bit of an outsider at school, unable to relate to those around him. He observed, "I felt like I belonged on a screen. I guess I became related to the people on that screen much more than the people around me." So in 1984, after graduating from high school, he moved to LA and began auditioning for roles. To keep a roof over his head, he took up odd jobs, including working at a doorknob factory and laying asphalt as part of a construction crew. His mother recalled that Luke was magnetic and charismatic, even without the Hollywood career, telling people in 1991, if Fredericktown ever had a ladies' man, it was Luke. She jokingly added, "It broke our hearts when he had to go off and pursue acting, but it left the phone free." Similarly, he was reportedly voted biggest flirt by his high school classmates. One of Luke's first gigs was appearing in a music video for the band Twisted Sister in 1985, and between 1984 and 1988, he auditioned for 256 acting roles before finally catching a break in 1988 when he moved to New York City and scored a part on daytime soap Loving, as well as another soap named Another World. But his career really took off in 1990 when he snapped up the role of Dylan McKay on the teen drama Beverly Hills 90210. Notably, he'd originally auditioned for another character, Steven Sanders, but was beaten for the part by Ian Ziering. Before long, not only was Luke Perry a household name, but he'd become a teenage heartthrob. From the very beginning of his career though, Luke grappled with the pros and cons of fame, and even as his reputation grew, he remained largely unbothered by the celebrity side of working in Hollywood. He openly talked about how much he disliked being referred to as a teen idol, and lamented the fact that he received thousands of letters from fans a week, and how unauthorized biographies of his life seemed to pop up left, right, and centre, using bizarre titles like Luke Mania and Loving Luke. People magazine also recalled how Luke once had to escape a mob of 4,000 screaming girls by hiding in a laundry hamper. While the Sun Sentinel reported on an incident at a shopping centre in Florida where 10,000 teen girls attended an autograph session with Luke in 1991, only for a riot to break out. The actor had to flee just 90 seconds after arriving. But in 1993, his attitude towards his newly found fame softened as he said, "The show has changed my life immeasurably. Life is certainly never going to be the same. It has been good for the most part. It certainly has some drawbacks, but I'm not bitching." Unlike many celebrities, Luke didn't buy into the materialism that comes with having lots of money to spend. He continued to drive his used Chevy Blazer and kept several pet Vietnamese pot-bellied pigs, one of which was named Jerry Lee. By all accounts, he stayed true to his roots and was known to be laid back and down to earth. He told People, "Some people would say that I'm not an actor, simply because I don't own a Harley Davidson and I've never been to a poetry reading. That shit isn't what I'm about." In another interview in 1991, Luke reflected on his hometown, noting, "I love where I come from. The people there are good people. When they say thank you, they mean it. A lot of people say nice things to me out here because they're getting paid to." While still filming 90210, Luke began taking on other roles, getting work on Joss Whedon's film version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was released in 1992, the film Terminal Bliss, released that same year, and on the Western biographical drama 8 Seconds, in which he played a professional rodeo cowboy, Lane Frost. He also presented the award for Best Metal Music Video at the 1992 MTV Music Video Awards. After 5 seasons, Luke left 90210 in a bid to find more mature roles that would push him creatively as an actor. He eventually starred in the classic sci-fi film The Fifth Element in 1997, alongside Mila Jovovich and Bruce Willis, and took up work as a voice actor in shows like The Simpsons, Johnny Bravo, The Incredible Hulk, and Family Guy. He also took roles in the films Normal Life, Invasion, and Riot. He finally returned to the show that made him a star for its final few seasons between 1998 and 2000, and appeared in its reunion special 3 years later. Reflecting on his time as Dylan McKay, Luke later stated, "I'm going to be linked with him until I die. But that's actually just fine. I created Dylan McKay. He's mine." When he opted not to reprise his role in the subsequent spin-off, he told outlets, "When you're in the professional acting business, you have to look into all these offers. And I don't mean anything bad about it, but creatively, it's something I have done before, and I don't know how it will benefit me if I do it again." He was also outspoken about his belief that he did not think he could play the character again without the show's producer, Aaron Spelling, who was not involved in the spin-off. The difference between CW bringing something back and Aaron Spelling doing something is significant, and I cannot do it without Aaron. The 90s were a very busy time for Luke. As well as constantly filming, he married Rachel Minnie Sharp on November 20th, 1993 at a quiet ceremony at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills. People reported that Rachel was once a furniture saleswoman who'd been pulled into the world of celebrity when she allegedly mailed Luke her bra in 1991, though the couple corrected the story, explaining that actually they'd met in a restaurant. Though she was not an actress, she did have a role in the movie Teen Wolf 2, and she was the daughter of a screenwriter named Alan Sharp, whose credits include the neo-noir flick Night Moves with Gene Hackman and the comedy drama Dean Spanley with Sam Neill. 4 years after tying the knot, Rachel gave birth to the couple's first child, a son named Jack. 3 years later, in 2000, their daughter Sophie was born. Luke was described as a hands-on father to his children, while co-stars from 90210 and beyond gushed about his gentle and kind nature. A source told People, as soon as he became a dad, that was it. He didn't care about being famous or being a celebrity. He knew what was important. Though he retreated from the spotlight, he continued to enjoy a steady flow of work. For Rachel and Luke, however, it wasn't meant to be. The couple split after 10 years together. In the early 2000s and 2010s, Luke took on all sorts of guest roles, including in the sitcoms Spin City, Will and Grace, and Community, and gritty crime dramas Law and Order, Special Victims Unit, and Criminal Minds. He also appeared in the Broadway production of The Rocky Horror Show in 2001, where he played Brad Majors, and 3 years later, he snagged the lead part in the London theatre adaptation of When Harry Met Sally, with Luke playing Harry alongside Alison Hannigan as Sally. In 2015, Luke suffered a health scare when he was found to have precancerous growths in his colon. Fortunately, they were found in time, but it prompted the star to create a will in which his children were named as his sole beneficiaries. He subsequently became an advocate for colon cancer testing. One of Luke's final roles was as Frederick Fred Andrews, the father of Archie Andrews, portrayed by KJ Apa, on the CW's Riverdale, a teen drama based on the characters of Archie comics. His final film role, meanwhile, was as Wayne Maunder in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he worked alongside Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, and Margot Robbie, to name just a few of the megastars in the ensemble cast. The film is set in 1969 and follows an actor and his stunt double as they navigate the changing Hollywood scene. It was released in July 2019 to critical acclaim. Luke's sudden downturn came completely out of left field, blindsiding everybody around him. On February the 27th, 2019, he was rushed to Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank after suffering a massive stroke in his home in LA. When EMTs arrived on the scene, they found the star responsive and talking, but his condition quickly deteriorated. Prior to the stroke, the 52-year-old had been seemingly healthy and in good spirits. He was enjoying working on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he'd recently gotten engaged to his partner of 10 years, Wendy Bauer. Though it had been decades since Beverly Hills 90210 went off the air, Luke was still in touch with his castmates, including Tori Spelling and Jenny Garth. A week before his demise, he'd caught up with both of them via text and sent them photographs of his 18-year-old daughter, Sophie, who was doing volunteer work in Malawi. It was the last time his co-stars would speak with him. Following the shocking news that her father was in hospital, Sophie jumped on the next available flight back to California and spent 20 hours in terrifying suspense as she wondered how her father was doing. Upon arriving at the hospital, she found that Luke had been sedated after he'd been admitted and was unconscious. He'd been put under in the hopes that his brain would have time to heal and recover. A source told Us Weekly, Luke's loved ones were hoping they'd pull him out of it after 48 hours or so, but after 5 days, the 52-year-old didn't recover. On March the 4th, his family were forced to make the devastating decision to pull him off life support, and he died shortly afterwards. According to his rep, he passed away surrounded by the people he loved most in the world, including his children, his fiancée, his ex-wife, whom he was still on good terms with, his siblings, and his mother and stepfather. His cause of death was noted to be complications from brain swelling as a result of the stroke. Following the passing of her father, Sophie wrote, "I'm not really sure what to say or do in this situation. It's something you aren't ever given a lesson on how to handle, especially when it's all happening in the public eye. So bear with me and know that I'm grateful for all the love. Just being grateful quietly." His son, Jack, who is a pro wrestler signed to All Elite Wrestling, wrote on Instagram, "He was a lot of things to a lot of people. To me, he was always Dad. He loved and supported me in everything and inspired me to be the best that I could possibly be." As news of his demise became public, an outpouring of love and grief from Luke's Hollywood friends and co-stars rushed in. His on-screen son in Riverdale, KJ Harper, spoke to Jimmy Fallon of his really close relationship with Luke, who acted as a father figure to the New Zealand native when they filmed in Canada. Meanwhile, 90210 castmate Ian Ziering wrote, "God, please give Luke a seat close to you. He deserves it." Molly Ringwald, who was working on Riverdale alongside Luke, tweeted, "My heart is broken. I will miss you so much, Luke Perry. Sending all my love to your family." 6 days after his passing, Luke's fiancée, Wendy, expressed her sheer devastation at the fate that had befallen her partner. She stated, "The past 11 and a half years with Luke were the happiest years of my life, and I am so grateful to have had time with him. Our lives were touched by an extraordinary man. He will be dearly missed." Loved ones said that Luke had found true joy and happiness with his new fiancée. Following his death, Luke was buried at the Perry family farm in Van Lear, Tennessee, where he'd owned a property since 1995. His character in Riverdale, Fred Andrews, was killed off, and the show's 4th season premiere was a tribute episode dedicated to Luke and his character. It featured his 90210 co-star, Shannon Doherty. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was also dedicated to his memory. Notably, Fox announced a reboot of the 90210 series on the day of Luke's stroke. Though he hadn't signed on as a full-time character like many of his old castmates, he had been open to returning to the franchise as a guest.